Welcome back to the home front. I'm your host, Reed Galen. Today, I want to share with you something I wrote and delivered to the South Orange County Democratic women earlier this week. But before I do that, I want to spend a couple of minutes on Donald Trump's recent picks for the United States cabinet, specifically when we're talking about foreign policy. The first pick is Senator Marco Rubio from the state of Florida. Yes, he's had some foreign policy experience in his service in the Senate, but his pick is to me one of abject weakness. This is a man for whom Donald Trump has no respect. The world knows that Trump has no respect for his pick for Secretary of State. And Rubio exudes no confidence or respectability in and of himself as he walks into a room. So when he goes and meets with his counterparts or foreign leaders, everyone's going to know this is a guy who bent over backwards, bent over forwards, kissed the ring for Donald Trump simply to get a job. And I think that he will be treated accordingly. And I think that that is a sad state of America, but here we are. The second one is Pete Hegseth, whose latest job is being the co-host of Fox and Friends Weekend to be Secretary of Defense. Now, Hegseth does have a great deal of combat experience. I believe he's got 2 Bronze Stars and a combat infantry badge. So he's certainly seen his share of war. But being on the ground in a firefight and sitting in the Secretary of Defense's office as you attempt to figure out what our potential adversaries are going to do and what our potential allies need is something that I don't think Hegseth probably ever dreamed he could take on, nor would anybody, I believe, in the military community or the National Security Committee believe he's qualified for. But here's where this comes down, guys. These decisions put the United States in a weaker position overseas, in a weaker position militarily. All the things that we take for granted as Americans, as citizens of the empire, for lack of a better way to put it, are made possible by tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of sailors who travel the seas 24/7, 365 to keep sea lanes open so that freighters and cargo ships and oil tankers and everybody else can get their stuff from wherever it's made to our shores. And with these picks, you're going to see, my guess is, more trouble on the high seas because Donald Trump is showing our adversaries, most importantly the Chinese, but also the Russians and the Iranians and the North Koreans, that he's not serious about making sure that the United States is safe and secure and leading the world. That's ultimately going to cost the individual consumer. That's going to cost the individual American money. If the Saudis decide to raise the price of oil, that is going to happen. Marco Rubio is not going to stop it. Putting another carrier battle group in the Persian Gulf isn't going to stop it. And this is all to make America what they would have called in the old days of, the Ottoman Empire, the sick man of the world. Guys, we're too big in an economy to kill, but we're perfect and ripe for the pickings to weaken with someone like Donald Trump at the helm. The Chinese love that. They want us buying their stuff, but they don't want us challenging their hegemony in the Western Pacific. The Russians like to have us out there because we probably create some sort of stability, but knowing that outside of NATO, right, they are going to have much more in the way of opportunity in Ukraine and to cause trouble in Eastern Europe. Now, I, for one, believe that the Europeans are not going to sit quietly. They have lived through Soviet and Russian domination over the course of the last several hundred years, depending on where you are, and I don't think they're going back. But I think that this is an important thing to understand, is that these little men who will sit in very big offices in Washington, D.C., the ultimate result will be less security for individual Americans, less security for the American military, and higher prices on everything. And that's before we get to tariffs. So I just wanted to give you that sort of sense of how I think it's important that we bring these kinds of decisions back down home to where actual people live. I think they understand. I don't think it's a matter of lack of understanding. I think it's that oftentimes the discussions that, frankly, people like me and many of you have stay at a level where we don't communicate with the people we need to communicate about what the differences in leadership are and why these decisions matter. So with that, guys, I want to turn to a speech I gave on Monday night, as I said, to the South Orange County Democratic women. Kim and Linda, thank you for inviting me. They are incredible. It is an incredible group, 750 members, guys. I've never met more fired up people, even in the wake of a big loss last week. They came raring to go. I spoke for a little, I think probably 10 or 15 minutes, which you'll hear here in a second. And then I took probably an hour and a half's worth of questions. So there was no crying in anybody's beer. There was no decision that, we've got to give up. But I think there is a lot of soul searching that we all need to do, whether or not that's someone like me who spent the last, hard to believe, decade take on a guy like Donald Trump and the things he wants to do, or my Democratic friends who I think have a lot of time spending time with their decisions and making harder decisions about where to go from here and looking in the mirror. And I know that's not a lot of fun. It's not a lot of fun in your personal life or your professional life, but it's got to happen. And if it's not going to happen, then I think that that's another discussion that needs to occur, because we can't and we should not have a few people on the coasts making decisions that will ultimately affect the rest of us. So with that, let me get to the speech I gave. Here we go. We lost. There is no sugarcoating that fact, and whatever you see in the media or opinion spaces that it, quote, wasn't that bad or was, quote, closer than you think, should be politely handed their walking papers. As former President George W. Bush famously said, close only matters in horseshoes and hand grenades. Many of my premises, most of them, were incorrect. I felt so confident saying, quote, there are more of us than there are of them. There might be out in the universe, but there weren't last week. Another is demographics is destiny. That expression takes on a different meaning after last Tuesday. We cannot and should not ignore it. As parties and political professionals, we spend far too much time breaking people into what they look like and not nearly enough time worried about, well, what worries them. Most of what's occupied the last decade for me, though, was the idea of being never Trump or anti-Trump. To be sure, we must contest every move he makes as vigorously as we can. But to be simply anti deprives us of half the argument. We're asking voters, our fellow Americans, to make value judgments on what we're telling them about the other party, team, campaign, and hoping that they'll intuit what we stand for. That's not how campaigns have worked. It's never how they've worked. It isn't now. We're living with the direct result of this strategy. Donald Trump won the presidency. He also won the popular vote. He also increased his vote share in states like New York and New Jersey. Republicans took the United States Senate, not surprisingly, and they will retain control of the United States House of Representatives. Most impactful, though, is that millions of Democratic voters stayed home. Like in 2016, they looked at their Democratic choice, and even against Donald Trump, found their own party wanting, not worth getting off the couch for. When all the votes are counted, turnout will be less than it was in 2020 during the depths of the global pandemic. There's a great deal of analysis going on, some of it important, but that need not concern us here and now. Our task is far more fundamental, foundational, and important. We can turn away from last Tuesday beaten and bloody, but nonetheless unbroken. Groups like yours are the heart, soul, backbone, arms, and legs of the work to be done as we move on from this moment. Over the last 8 years, I've used words like fight and resist more times than I can count. I don't know how many tweets, podcast episodes, Substack posts, or interviews replete with the idea of fighting and resisting. But folks, in too many instances, those words are performative. They keep flagging spirits alive and perhaps get a supporter to hit that donate button one more time. These words, though, give too many of us false, cold comfort of feeling like something is happening when, in fact, all that fighting and resisting occurs in a place far from the same voters so many of us claim to be representing. There will be important acts of resistance among individuals far braver than I as we see Donald Trump and his administration take office in January. Democratic leaders, governors, members of Congress, and the like will do their best to throw up roadblocks to Trump's bulldozer, and I'll give them credit in advance for those attempts. But we should lay the words fight and resist aside for now. Instead, we should focus on the work of democracy, of community building, of communicating with voters, and ultimately the work of winning elections. After all, that's what this is about. There are no moral victories in campaigns. They are binary outcomes. You win or you lose. To you, my Democratic friends, I suggest that we need less pontification and more organization. But Reed, you'll say, we organized. You did, you have, and you will. But what I ask of you and of all of us is to change the definition of work and organize. How are we organizing? To what end? When we get a group together, what are we telling them? More importantly, are we listening to them? We must meet voters where they are is both a frustrating and tired trope, but still true for all its overuse. I was privileged to travel the country this fall. I went to the most swing electoral states. I met people of all creeds, colors, economic, and educational backgrounds. With the notable exception of the man that chased us around in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, I met folks who not only felt left behind, they have been left behind. When a member of the Duke University Democratic Club asks me where they should get unbiased information, we have a problem. When a black man in a poor neighborhood in Grand Rapids, Michigan said he'd vote for Kamala Harris because she was, quote, the lesser of two evils, we have a problem. When I drove through the town of Wisconsin Rapids, Wisconsin, and see the enormous paper mill that went out of business, taking 900 jobs with it, in a town of 20,000, and I leave knowing that we have nothing to offer those people, we have a problem. When my friends who have no love for Donald Trump feel completely alienated from their only alternative, we have a problem. In short, we have too small a tent with too small a door. I've fought alongside Democrats for 5 years. Democratic elites and leaders make it tough to be a Democrat and tougher to want to be one. That's why I'm here tonight, because groups like the Democratic Women of South Orange County have been and will be the spearhead in the work to be done today, tomorrow, next month, and next year. The work you focus on is not fancy. It's not glamorous. It won't be picked up by elite media, but you do it year in and year out because you believe in your cause and you are right to do so. You are ideally suited to the task ahead. We must listen. We must learn. We must get back to winning elections that we should win and contest all races up and down the ballot. If half of life is showing up, then all of you have passed that test. But now I need you to come with me just a little bit further. The problems Democrats have nationally are not of your making. Your work, though, will demonstrate to those same elites that you know your people, your county, and your business. Nationally, the Democratic Party has a significant brand issue, but that's for another time. The solution that we must begin is foundational. This won't be easy, but nothing worth doing ever is. We must redouble our commitment to building and strengthening our communities every day of the year, not just 2 months out of every 24 when we ask voters blindly to give us their most precious civic gift, their vote. Each of us in this room is pro-democracy. It's not enough. Pro-decency. That's not enough. Pro-America. That's not enough. We need to be pro-voter, pro-progress, pro-work, and we must understand that we will not be saved by polling or metrics or super PACs or high-minded bullshit. We will only save ourselves when we recommit to do the work necessary to convince our fellow Americans that there is indeed a better path, one which we used to say in Republican politics lifts all boats and leads not further into the darkness that Donald Trump and his gang offer, but into the light of a world in which they and their families can make ends meet, reduce the enormous stress and uncertainty that this life puts on them, and prove that they too can be part of something larger than themselves and have something to look forward to. We will do a lot that doesn't work. When that happens, we won't do it anymore. We will do some things that are helpful. We'll do more of that. What we will not do, though, is play the victim. We all here share some responsibility for our current state. Now we will dust ourselves off, look toward the sun, and return to tilling the fields of American democracy. Expecting that flower to grow on its own is both foolish and arrogant. We have been left wanting, and we must earn our fellow Americans' trust and then their votes. I will not pretend to know what the next 4 years hold or believe that they'll be easy. What I do know, with complete conviction and complete lack of reservation, is that the work we must do together starts in rooms like this with folks like you in communities like yours. My friends, it feels as if the roof has fallen in. We must now strengthen the foundation and build from here. Everybody, as always, thank you so much. I want you to go to jointheunion.us and sign up, guys. The work begins anew today. Also, please go to sez.us, SEZ.us, and sign up for the social media platform for Sanity. Remember to put a +1 in front of your number when you're signing up. As always, guys, I hope you'll listen, follow, rate 5 stars, share this podcast with your friends and family. We will do this, but it will take all of us. Thanks, everybody.